Hello, everyone. One of the questions I've been asked in the Q&A discussion area is about the nervous system and nervous system well-being, healing, and such things. I've linked a few things nutritionally in the box below that can be helpful for the nervous system as far as physical needs. But this video mostly will be looking, at least what I'm feeling here, is that this video really is mostly about the the difference between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, as far as the terminology given, the two sides, you could say, of the nervous system. Many of you know that the high stress people living in this world has them in the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight nervous system. And of course, the physical damage, mental damage, etc., from this is really, really big and really, really rampant. And of course, the nervous system is the communicator and the coordinator of the other systems. You could say, as far as physical systems, which there's a physical and non physical component to the nervous system, but looking at the physical side of things for a second, the physical aspects of the nervous system are really the closest to the non physical aspect of yourself, and they're behind the other systems. So, for instance, your cardiovascular system can't function, can't do what it needs to do without the nervous system, wouldn't know what to do. The many functions going on in the body due to the infinite, immeasurably powerful intelligence of the Creator within you, the things you don't control, the things you don't have to think about, the many things going on you don't even know about. Aspects of the nervous system are, of course, coordinating these activities. The immune system is highly affected by the nervous system. Musculoskeletal control, coordination, strength coming from the nervous system. And, we could sit here and list the other systems of the body, but in other words, they're all basically being communicated with and coordinated by the nervous system. So, anytime you go further upstream or further towards the root of something and you deal with something there, of course, all the downstream things are affected for the better. So, it really is wise to consider the nervous system and what we can do about it, the situation you find yourselves in. I realize that we need to talk about both the environmental stressors that are all around you, and then we need to go to a deeper layer of what happens, for example, when you leave society, you get away from all the external stresses, and you find that you still have a lot of nervous system dysfunction occurring, right? It's like certain problems you can get some distance from and find that you may have escaped part of that external cause, but you're still dealing with some of the internal imbalance. So then, of course, the responsibility is fully on you, which it really is on all of us anyway, regardless of how much external interference is occurring. You are the indwelling spirit of this temple. The nervous system is coordinating the activities going on in the temple. And if you if you understand that your temple, ideally, is to be a temple of the living God, of course, we're talking about an infinite, perfect, all powerful, wonderful, loving source of everything being. And the idea is not to say that you are that, it's to say that you're like a droplet of it. And what can you do with your temple to allow that indwelling spirit to be present, to be apparent, and to be flowing through you so that your life can be what it's ideally meant to be? If you understand that the archetype of Christ is really the ideal for humanity, that God, if you will, or insert another word here that you're comfortable with, has designed the concept of what a human is to become, or perhaps in God's eyes outside of time already is. And it's helpful to know that and to sit with that between you and God if you can have that level of intimacy. Now, practices that allow you to access your parasympathetic healing nervous system so that it can regenerate itself and then from there properly coordinate the functions of the endocrine and other systems in the body. Practices of that nature put you more in touch with these inner truths and allow you to more closely align. So, what is the issue? The issue is many types of interference, right? And also improper understanding or belief, improper understanding, improper philosophy of life, which is what the world has been suffering with for a very long time. Personally, I meditate on the Christ principles because they're the only thing I've ever seen that is 100% infallible and true. And they're the only thing that can give you true alignment. I like to say to myself that I am a Padawan of Yeshua ben Yosef. And that just feels right to me. But the idea is to purify your temple. Now, part of this would be cleaner health practices. But obsessing about what you eat isn't really the answer there. It's to trust in the simplicity of the natural design of things. But how do you know what the natural laws are? How do you know what's true when you've been given many agendas and misinformation? And what is your philosophy of life? Let's say again that you manage to get away from the external stressors, the 9 to 5, a neurotic boss that's always trying to stress you out because the business model of the world acts like that's going to make you a more productive tool until there's nothing left of you, basically. And you realize you're just doing unproductive work to get paid, to pay your way, to give Caesar the coins he demands for you to live in his kingdom. It's all very unfulfilling, and you're asking yourself, if I have to go through so much stress for things I'm not even doing for any authentic reason other than the fact that I have to survive here, what is the answer to any of this? Well, on the pragmatic side of things, ideally a person should be definitely looking to align their life inwardly and then outwardly to reflect more accurately who they are, so you can live more of the purpose you really came into the world for. But in the meantime, how do you survive and possibly, as much as possible, even thrive getting from here to there? Um, so you have to start really pragmatic. You have to make time for yourself to access the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. My breathing video where I just recorded myself just relaxing and instinctively accessing my parasympathetic, and I sort of invited others to do so. That's just an example. Of course, it's easy for me, right, in a beautiful place in nature with no one telling me how I have to schedule my time. I agree. It is much easier for me to do something like that than it is for most people in the situation they're in. However, for sure, I've had to find ways to manage myself and take care of whatever well being and vitality I had, mind, body, and spirit, along the way to get to this point, or I wouldn't have been able to, right? So don't let yourself obsess about how if something's not perfect right now, it's not worth doing, because at a higher level, perhaps we can allow ourselves to see that there actually is a perfect design to creation. Um, I'll get more into that in a second, but let's assume that's true. If you don't yet see it, let's just assume for a second that's true. That means that even if you find yourself in very unideal situations or circumstances, the question would be, what is your choice about each of these things? It's okay to acknowledge many things are unideal. It's okay to acknowledge that many things you don't agree with. Some of them you may have to live with for now, even if you disagree. So start practical, start small. Progress is progress, and if one progresses at something, eventually they get somewhere much better with it. If you can make some kind of time to do something that helps you access your parasympathetic nervous system, for some that could be a breathing exercise like I showed. That may not be pragmatic in the situation you're in. You may not currently have any access to somewhere you can go where the air is good and worth breathing deeply, and you may feel an inner conflict about breathing damaged air. Personally, if I feel an inner conflict about something, I realize I need to find something that I believe in doing more than that. So Some people will realize that when they do something that is part of their inner childlike creative nature. I mean, for one person, this could be involving some kind of physical movement. For another person, it might be like painting or writing or singing or any number of things. A lot of times, these would be more artistic, creative kind of things. But if you find yourself entering what I think in modern terms they call a flow state to any degree, you're accessing now your parasympathetic, and this is very healing for you. So, for some people, a tiny backyard garden can get them in that place. Um, even if you say live in a busy city, some people enjoy just going out and walking, or jogging or something. I'm not saying the air is perfect, but if you find yourself in a flow state where you just feel really good and you're not thinking and you're not in the same thought loops and you relax and you're not really keeping track of how time is passing or anything, you're just enjoying the experience and being present with it. Things of that nature are helping you access your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, obviously, deeper sleep, of course, as well. And if you haven't seen it, maybe you could see my Sleep Like a Dog video if you're interested. Some things I had to share about sleep alone, which is obviously lacking in a lot of our lives. Um, Even my own sometimes, and not for negative reasons. It's not because my schedule is controlled. Sometimes a person can lack sleep just because they're excited to get up the next day and they keep waking up early because they have a lot of fruitful things to do and they're excited to do it. That's much less draining, of course, than when you are forced to wake up early with very little sleep to do things you take no pleasure or no satisfaction in doing. And that inner honest reflection about how these things are unfulfilling is important. It's painful, but it's important. Almost any real work you do on yourself requires going through things that are uncomfortable, of course. And remember, the limitations of the human ego is to, of course, resist anything uncomfortable. The ego may mean well in its own misguided way, but it's a big limitation to all of us, to our opportunity for real spiritual growth, which is, again, the spiritual reality is where this, as we call it, physical reality is coming from. Think about if we can see our nervous system as sort of like an energy running through our other body systems and coordinating them. And right now I'm calling the nervous system physical because it does contain things like conductors, like nerves that energy is passing through. But what is that energy? And where is that coming from? So if we take one more step behind the nervous system, you're starting to get into the realm of the so-called non-physical, which is what you really are. So of course practices that involve accessing the parasympathetic nervous system are often related to or abundantly useful for any kind of positive spiritual cultivation. And then there's a bunch of physical benefits trickling down from that as the flesh is attempting to follow the spirit, right? Now, when it comes to philosophy of life, you're not coming into a world where, in most cases, there are rare exceptions, I'm sure, but you're not coming into a world, most of us, where the subconscious ideas of the reality you exist in are particularly healthy, and in many cases, they're incredibly unhealthy. So, in making some time for inner reflection, for example, if you can start to look at what you really think about this existence you're in, what are really your beliefs about this? What kind of universe am I in? What do I believe about that? Do I really fully feel like I exist in a perfect universe created and operated by a perfect infinite being that knows exactly what it's doing, is really omni everything, and fully aware of everything that's best for everyone and allowing it to happen as it needs to play out? Therefore, there's really nothing to fear, even fear itself, because of course fearing fear just just creates and generates fear. Then if you're operating from a place that healthy, of course when fears come up you recognize that, okay, my ego limited mortal mind of course is subject to fear or stress or anger or any number of other unhealthy things, but it's not really me. And I can have compassion on it. By having compassion on it and observing it, I can understand the same thing about others. And if someone is fully fooled and lost in the darkness, the metaphorical darkness of their own ego of consciousness, or you could say worldly consciousness in old biblical terms, and I'm sure there's plenty of other terms for this in different backgrounds, but that sort of worldly consciousness that does not understand or comprehend spiritual truth is, of course, subject to every kind of struggle and every kind of desperation because it believes it's separate, it believes it's limited, it believes it's vulnerable, it believes there's a lot to fear. And this, of course, is unhealthy in and of itself for your nervous system. You're not accessing your parasympathetic nervous system when you're living in the ego because the ego is always either eagerly pursuing some sort of superiority, which is not healthy if you've come to observe that and understand those feelings about competitiveness, me versus that, me over you. If you've been in a better place of consciousness, if you've felt a higher truth, if you've sat with the presence of the true nature of God, for example, and then you start to slip into that, those feelings of the need to prove yourself, the need to be right, the need to be better, the need to look better, the need to achieve something, prove something, whatever it is. Or the ego can go the other way into victimhood, lack, and all those things feel very uncomfortable and unhealthy as well. Of course, the more you identify with it, the more your nervous system is going to believe it. And the more your nervous system will suffer. And then downstream, of course, all the other systems will suffer. The more you're able to look at it and have compassion on it and understand that that part of your mind is really existing within illusion, and it's not its fault that it falls for these illusions, but you also don't have to actually identify with them. The easier it is to separate from the amount of stress hormones, negative emotions, etc., that are generated from those beliefs and feelings and perceptions. So, of course, fruitful spiritual practices, which to me always, the real ones always come back to the same very, very, very simple Christ principles. Oneness, the oneness of all things. Hear, O Israel, and everybody else. God is one, and there is nothing besides him. Okay? All the mystics of all time have understood this. They're largely not understood, but they're all tapping into and finding the same simple truth for themselves. If the light of the Creator can occupy this vessel, then it can occupy your vessel as well. Is it a different Creator? Is one drop of water, if you separate it from the sea, is it really not part of the sea anymore? Is it still part of the same thing? Furthermore, are we really separate, or are we more like bumps or waves on the sea? Mm. Metaphorical darkness created by what the Bible would call sin and other systems might call something else is actually just an absence of awareness of truth. And in that desperation, in that absence of the awareness of the truth, one can do all kinds of dysfunctional, painful things to themselves and others. And the further they fall into the judgment of that, whether they're looking at themselves and seeing it in themselves, or they're looking at someone else and seeing it in them, to judge is to be judged, not because God is actually judging you. What did Yeshua say? What did Yeshua say? Not what everybody says for him, but what did he say? I don't judge you, and nor does my Father in heaven judge you, but you have one who judges you. Now again, if you take a mystical, spiritual view of this, and you're able to go inward with it, past your ego self, and just observe that from a safe distance and sit with what it really means, it becomes apparent that those painful delusions of separation, that something is wrong, that you're not part of what's right, that maybe you're bad, maybe somebody else is bad, fear. And no choice or thought or feeling you entertain can be neutral. They are all either feeding life, creation, or they're feeding death, destruction. That's one terminology. You could say it's feeding light or dark. You can say it's feeding love or fear, truth or untruth. But these things are painful in your nervous system, okay? Now, there are people that sort of become addicted to the outrage, to the constant stress, to having something to be upset about. And then if you look at the world's media addictions, it's very apparent that that's what sells, and that's what has been selling to humankind for a long time. So rather than project and blame somebody else and blame, media for what it is or anything, wisdom would say just use it as a reflection of something. Look into that mirror of media and say, well, what is it that's being sold to us there, and why? Why have we chosen as a species to largely be addicted to the outrage? What are the root beliefs or root understandings about our reality that are so incorrect that we're addicted to things that are actually destroying us and destroying others? Oh, it's not destroying me, bro. It's good for me to be mad at those guys over there. Okay, but humans literally used to live 1,000 years, and those were not ultimately enlightened humans. They were just a lot less damaged than what you're looking at now. And things that would now be considered miraculous or impossible, many of which I've experienced myself, they're labeled medical impossibilities, etc. And throughout history, followers of the way, for example, the Nazarenes and the Essenes, the originals who lived with and among Yeshua and lived as he lived, they were all tortured to death. And then this was basically covered over, but they also performed the same kind of miracles, the miracle healings and so forth. So, for example, the Roman Empire, because it couldn't do that itself, and it wasn't able to torture their magic out of them, it just decided to burn them alive, and tell you that all those things are impossible, because if we can't do it, you can't do it, and don't you dare even talk about it. Now, not to wag a finger at any particular empire here, but that one being a little bit seemingly removed in history might make this object lesson a little better, but you can see the same things happening in the world around you now. People that experience what are labeled miracles, which are actually completely natural things that used to be normal to human beings a long time ago, are in so much trouble for it that they have to hide it. There were a lot of writings taken out of the Bible and labeled as Gnostic writings, meaning secret knowledge. You can't trust those because those were kept secret by weirdos. No, the truth is, those things were hidden in caves and buried because for practicing them, if you got caught, you would be burnt alive or something else terrible, and your whole family would be butchered. It's not that somebody's been trying to hide the truth from you, it's that the truth is often obscured by what collectively humans still believe about their reality. So, if we're generating an energy field of that much fear and terror of natural abilities that should just, or could just, I won't say should because I'm not judging the way things are. From a high enough perspective, you understand that creation is perfect the way it is. Humans are allowed to make any free will mistakes. If you say you don't like the suffering, then become the source of the healing, really, is what one's supposed to discover within themselves, potentially. But you're in a world where these kinds of philosophies of life, and they diverge into many different versions of the same sort of terrifying paganistic ancient stories that act like they're not what they are, but they still are. And these kinds of things have had people afraid of the dark, making up all sorts of things, hurting each other, eating each other, raping and pillaging each other, and it just goes on and on. So, of course, the nervous system existing in an energy field like this is mostly running on the sympathetic side, fight or flight. People ask themselves if it's the fight or flight nervous system I am in, which was really designed for short bursts. It's supposed to be like a well charged battery. So, if you fall off a cliff, you might be able to catch yourself. If you have to run from a tiger, you might be able to get away. If you have to fight you and struggle out of some really difficult situation suddenly, you can kick in your sympathetic nervous system, do all kinds of things with high adrenaline, and then deal with the recovery from all the wounds of it later. It's an amazing system, but why are people stuck in it 24/7 if they're just doing the basic 9 to 5? And if the narrative is, life's easy, bro, just work and watch football and dub airs and, whatever, drink your beer and eat your junk food and sing a song and watch your favorite TV program or listen to your radio or whatever. It's all good. So why then? Why then are people chronically stuck in the sympathetic nervous system and breaking their own body down through autoimmune disease and nervous system damage and all the correlating glands and coordinators from there? causing sabotage to the system. Perhaps it's a nice analogy to picture the whole body, the human body, as being a bunch of different cells that are different individuals. Perhaps this is a great analogy for the higher truth of what we are. And within that system, if the nervous system is discoordinated, because it's in the fight or flight side, because the cells believe in things like us against you, me against them, the heart is being hurt by the mind, the adrenals in the kidneys are attacking the intestines. I mean, now you have this big system that believes in separation, fights against itself in all these different forms. And then you have things that believe in separation so much that they become encased in their own membrane, and they grow separately from everything else until they kill the whole organism. If this is the belief system underlying most of what's going on in the world still, you can look at a physical human body and understand how tumors are formed, at least coming from the esoteric level. There will be a lot of correlating physical things that'll go along with that. The challenge with looking at things from the physical first is that if you don't realize that the physical is coming from the spiritual, then there's only so much you can ever do to deal with the physical. You can throw billions of dollars and all kinds of fear and campaigns at it, but you're generally making it worse because you're feeding the fear itself, which is spiritual ignorance. If you approach it from the spirit side first and you look at it and say, yes, I'm doing things in physical reality that are undermining my health, but why? These things are coming from my current spiritual paradigm. If it's causing death and destruction, then whatever it is I believe in I'm operating from is not actually truth. Now, if you don't believe that yet, of course, this isn't going to do you a lot of good. You're not going to be able to fool yourself or hack yourself into doing something you don't actually believe. I just share these things, but because they're what my teacher, my master, my leader shows me. My ego deals with its own fears, and when that happens, I notice the undermining of my physical well-being. And there's things like cortisol and so forth, and immune dysfunction. If something causes me tremendous terror and fear, I'll often manifest all sorts of physical sicknesses and damages quite quickly because my immune system basically went offline. And I have an extremely strong immune system when I'm in a more balanced, reasonably healthy state of consciousness. So, if you look at a world that is pumping you full of an underlying philosophy of fear, and then people have been trained to be addicted to outrage on top of that, what bad thing is happening, how bad the world is? It's bad. These guys are bad. There's all these hidden bad things coming out. Yes, yes. There's a spiritual detox attempting to happen on planet Earth. But what you make of that is paramount to your personal experience of it. Again, what did Yeshua say? Not all the people that talk for him. What did he say? He said the kingdom of heaven is within you and it is already laid out all across the earth, but men don't see it. So, humanity, this addiction to fear porn and all the things that are going wrong and all the apocalypse, and it's the end of this and it's the end of that and it's your fault and it's their fault and it's my fault and it's somebody's fault. This addiction to outrage and terror and the end and the destruction of all things, what is it helping you to do? It's helping you to go along with and participate in the destruction of all things, which is a voluntary process that you've been somehow hijacked or deceived into using your own free will for. What if you did see the kingdom of heaven within you and you saw it laid out upon the earth? What then would you be manifesting? Collectively, let's say. Let's say it's more than just a few weirdos on the planet that are largely misunderstood. What if this was a collectively held understanding and visual of things? Would you see certain people as so bad that we're all doomed? Or would you see them as deeply entrenched in darkness and desperately needing unconditional love and healing? And understand that there's a God who's actually all powerful that is more than capable of healing them too. Can you imagine, humanity, what kind of a paradigm shift? And remember, your imagination is more than just some vain activity to amuse yourself. Your imagination is basically what you start holding in the inner world, and if you hold it hard enough and focus on it enough, you start manifesting results in the outer world. Can you imagine, humanity? And please do. It'll be good for your nervous system. What kind of a new earth you'd actually be first seeing from within, from the kingdom within, and from the eyes. Let your eye be single, because the eye is the light of the soul and so forth. And if your eye be clean, you're going to see things one way. You're going to see the kingdom laid out on the earth. And if your eye be darkness, how great is that darkness? I mean, these are all just basic, simple spiritual principles put into simple human terms so that those that have eyes to see, pun intended, can see past the simplicity of the words and the superficial seeming meaning of them and access the simple, basic spiritual principles that this universe is created from, operating from, and always has been and always will be, because they were perfect to begin with. And any narrative that has you believing otherwise has you going along with something that is untrue. Now, this plays out through your nervous system and your flesh, but it's coming from your consciousness. It's coming from abiding untruth when you are made of the truth. I believe that's enough. I believe that's what I'm supposed to allow to be passed on this one. Um, Again, few healthy things in the info box for your nervous system, physical components. But just consider that all things are always coming from the spiritual. And if we can use the human body as an analogy and say, you've got like your muscular skeletal system, it's really dense. What's that being controlled by? Well, certain metabolic factors. You got a metabolism system and mitochondria's little sun galaxies burning energy inside of you, just like the sun, with electrons orbiting around them, just like a galaxy. And you have all these spaces in between. So you have all these little galaxies making up a microcosm of a universe in and of itself, because all things are just coming from the same thing, and they're all operating on the same natural principles. People think they need hundreds and hundreds and thousands of laws to govern them, or some do, the empire does. What did Yeshua say about that? What did he say about salvation? Because it's funny, you never hear this in churches. What did Yeshua say even is salvation, and what does it mean? It's to discover and cultivate the kingdom within you and on the earth right now. And how do you access it? Repent, let go of whatever you've been doing otherwise, with a humble heart before God. Forgive everyone, including yourself, so you can be completely free spiritually and completely forgiven before God. And understand that you can't abide in fear and love at the same time. So if fear comes up, don't judge yourself and don't believe it. Just observe it, that it's an illusion. Heal it. Be kind to it. Be kind to yourself. And then you're going to understand how you can do that for others. You start cultivating that and you find you are in the kingdom. That's what he said. So what are all these laws that man makes to complicate things? Someone said to him, how do I attain salvation? Obey the law. Which ones? He starts listing the 10 Commandments. Well, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't lie about your neighbor, don't covet what others have. Okay, I got those though, man. I do all those. I've lived the 10 Commandments from birth. And this was a rich guy, so he says, well, you're really close. If you really want to enter the kingdom right now, give up all your worldly stuff and follow me. Come with me. Let's do this. And the guy went away sad because he was really close. But what was the one last thing? His ego had been given a lot in life. I had a lot of stuff. I got a lot of wealth. Now you're telling me that really, to really fully be in the kingdom, I'm going to have to set all that aside and put the kingdom first? So understand that what's going on in your nervous system. Let's start pretending we're layering things up here from a denser reality. Bones and muscles, metabolic stuff, digestive and eliminatory stuff, cardiorespiratory, pumping the blood around, endocrine gland coordination, communicating with all your organs so they can do what they do. What's up from the endocrine gland? The nervous system. What's up from the nervous system? It's like we're leaving the body, right? What you really are, that's what it is. The spiritual reality that all this is coming from. Now, if that version of you has fallen for the illusion of the man, the mind of man, because man doesn't see the kingdom. The self harm in the nervous system is going to be reflected through all the other things, just like the self harm of what we collectively believe about reality is played out across the earth and all the abuse and destruction and hatred and blame and murder and judging and separation from God, which is an illusion you're allowed to experience for good reason until you're truly tired of it and truly done with it and you've had enough of it. So as pertains to this video, that's enough on an understanding of the nervous system. Remember, starting anywhere to make time to tend to these valuable, important things is obviously more than worth it, because if you can't tend to your own temple, how is it you're going to tend to anyone else's? Again, that's like trying to dig a tiny little splinter out of somebody else's eyes when you have a log in your own. You're just going to poke their eyes out in the process, and now everybody's blind, right? All right, guys, I love you. Enough for now.